Hey everyone, my name is Alyssa.
And I'm Tony, and we are the Soultry Sisters.
We are here for our first episode of our Live Vibrant and Shine Bright series. So thank you for being here. We just want to tell you thank you for being here and supporting us. If you are joining us on this live right now, we ask that you go ahead and click that share button. Share us on your Facebook page. If you're watching it later, share it as well. We want to spread the word what we're talking about today. And also be sure to follow us on Soultry Sisters on all of our social media handles.
You can also visit SoultrySisters.com. That's our website. So we have everything about us, about Soultry, our upcoming events, how to contact us. So that's a great place to stop in as well. And so today is the first of our Live Vibrant, Shine Bright series. And it's a series centered around elevating the mind, body, and soul. And we wanted to come together to connect and collectively heal as a community, especially this month. It's Mental Health Awareness Month. So reading and that kind of stuff kind of goes into that as well.
Yes. And this month, we'll be focusing on the art of reading. We started a book club this month on Facebook to have and create a safe place for people to discuss our thoughts, dive deeper into the text, and explore ways to apply this to our daily lives.
Yeah, so the book we're currently reading is The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. It's about the agreements one should make with themselves in order to start experiencing more happiness, more freedom, and more love. And each agreement helps us reflect on and release self-limiting beliefs to reach our highest potential to transform our lives. It's a simple and practical book if you guys read it already. And if you can apply these four simple truths, it can actually be life-changing.
In this episode, we will be dedicating time to going over the first agreement. And at the end, we'll be sharing one of our favorite soul care tips.
So the first agreement is be impeccable with your word. And if you're joining us, feel free to comment below, like as we go on, because we'll be able to look at your comments as we go. So definitely just share whatever your thoughts are as we go through the different sections.
Yes. We currently can't see who's in the live right now. So if you are here, say hi, say your name so we can shout you out.
So the first agreement is be impeccable with your word. And a quote we wanted to share is, through the word, you express your creative power. And so this shows how you have the power to manifest anything and everything in your life. It talks about how your dreams, the truth, thoughts, feelings are all manifested through your words. So you really have the power to be anything, do anything that you want. And some of the benefits of being impeccable with your word are eliminating negative thoughts, and it helps you practice mindfulness.
Yes, and so for today's episode, we will be talking about some activities like reframing and retraining the mind. And so what that is the practice of using affirmations. Want to go into that, Tony?
Yeah, so the definition of affirmations is a statement of truth which aspires to create or absorb in one's life, or a positive statement that declares goals in their complete state. So what's important about that is that it's declaring it as a positive statement in the complete state. So an example would be, I am worthy, or I am supported. And these work best when you use it in repetition. So when you keep practicing it, like through writing it, so you can journal about your affirmations, you can say them out loud, which I find the most powerful, and saying it to other people, and then also embodying it. So if your affirmation is I am worthy, like maybe you're standing up more straight, maybe you like are walking with more confidence when you go to like your interview or an audition. So you can definitely use affirmations to help you reframe your thoughts.
Yes, and there's also activities that support being impeccable with your word. Some of them we wanted to share with you is meditating. So that's like focusing the mind. So you can also pair affirmations with meditations. They actually advise that you can either use affirmation at the beginning, throughout, or at the end. Another way to be impeccable with your word is to be creative, like cooking, drawing, dancing, and building. And so that concept, you might be thinking like, but it's being impeccable with my word. What does that have to do with my action? But, creating and being in the action of creating something, it exactly goes back to that first quote, which is, through the word, you express your creative power. So you're cultivating that creative power by putting positive thoughts into action or into manifesting it into the food you're making, the things that you're building, and just actually dancing it out. Another thing that's like super easy that you probably already do, which is listen to music. How many times do you have, that like, happy dance playlist that matches your emotions? So instead of going to that like, crying playlist, go ahead and play the happy dance playlist. Another thing that helps you be impeccable with your word is taking time away from social media. How many times do you go on social media and you'll see and you'll have the stimuli of, negative thoughts, negative words. So in order to counter that, just take some time away from social media. And the last and easiest thing is to prioritize sleep and rest. How many times have you said something that you didn't mean to say when you were tired or fatigued? So those are activities and ways to embody and embrace being impeccable with your word.
Mm-hmm. And to kind of sum up that first quote that we shared, basically like being impeccable with your word is like communicating with your consciousness. So if you're impeccable with your word, you'll be in a growth mindset, you'll be in a state of gratitude, and you'll change from having like a fear-based mindset to then having faith. So it definitely helps in like different aspects of your life.
I just want to take a moment to shout out some people we have here. We have Larry in the building. Hi, Larry. Good evening. So happy you're here. And he shared one of the activities that he likes to do while he is doing his Soulcare and practicing his being impeccable with his word is painting. We love painting. So
we do paint and sip sometimes.
Yes, you have to join us sometime. We actually got some questions about us doing like some type of paint and sip via Facebook Live or IG Live. So don't worry, that's definitely something we've been thinking about. It's just logistics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be really fun.
So Tony, like, what are some of your thoughts when you think about being impeccable with your word? Like, what are your reactions to this first agreement?
Yeah, so I read this book originally last year, and it was actually really life-changing in a sense, because then I was like more intentional with like my words and my actions, and then so now rereading it this year, it's different because like my life, like circumstances, my relationships are different, so it's really interesting to kind of apply it to different situations I experience. I find the first agreement the most challenging because when you're aware of like your words and what you're doing, like I find myself having like kind of reflecting a lot, which sometimes can be overwhelming. But I find it very beneficial as well because I've been like more intentional with like the things I say to myself and others, and it helps me check myself. Like if I'm like thinking something in like a negative mindset, I'll be like, wait, why am I thinking that? Like, is that even like my thoughts or is that like someone else's thoughts that now I've like created to be my own belief? And like basically every time I read the book, it's like really interesting to see how the different agreements like play out in my life or like my relationships. Because even though I've read the book before, like when you reread things, it like kind of sparks different stuff in you. So it'd be interesting to know if you guys watching have read the book before or if you're rereading it and kind of if you guys have like different thoughts now you're reading it at a different time. And then Alyssa, like, do you have any?
Yeah, I do. I mean, definitely comment below if this is your first time or second time. For me, unlike Tony, this is my first time reading the Four Agreements. I remember her when she first read it, telling me about this book. And I also kind of, as I was reading through the book, I was like laughing to myself because with these agreements, there's so many times where, I was, talking to her when I was feeling frustrated or feeling down, and she would say, you really should read the 4 agreements. And as I was like, wow, like that would have helped me in retrospect. So it's my first time reading it, but it's definitely not too late. For me, the first agreement, being impeccable with your word, it's a tough one to digest, because for me, it doesn't feel natural. Because, I mean, when I first started like being impeccable with your word, I'm like, oh yeah, like you just tell yourself. But then he was like, we actually lie to ourselves. Like 95% of the things we tell ourselves are a lie. And so I was like, so I'm lying to myself? And it was just this weird mental, like, double dutch I had to go through with trying to digest this concept. And I think I'm still digesting it, because I find myself taking 2 steps forward by, being impeccable with my word, but then I'll catch myself, because just like our body, our words are, we're using this as it's a muscle. So I'm trying to retrain and reframe my mindset. So this week when I was doing certain activities, I started to apply being impeccable with my word. For instance, I've been doing a lot of, exercises at home. I've been using the Fit On app, and I use the mirror to kind of reference to my alignment. And I found myself saying negative things to myself, like, oh, look at this, look at that. And I'm like, no. I was like, you are powerful. Like, you got this. You're so strong. Like, you're making it work in your bedroom. So I definitely found myself catching those times where I wasn't being impeccable with my word. So it's been nice to apply it this week.
Yeah. Another thing I just thought of right now is like being impeccable with your word. Like, I think like 2 years ago, I was like reading some other book, and it was talking about like kind of like the little white lies that we say, like when you're running late and being like, oh, like my car battery died, or like, oh, I ran out of gas, I had to get it, when it's like you just like overslept. So I've also tried to kind of retrain myself to, instead of like that instinct to like have a white lie of like, oh, like I meant to do this, or even like when you're texting, like, oh, sorry, just saw this. Like instead of that, like I'll just be like, I'll just reply to the message. Like, why do they need a white lie for me to feel better? Like I'll just be like, oh, or be like, oh, something truthful. I'll say like, I have been busy, which is true, and then like reply to whatever that message was. But like even things like texting and like when we go to work and school, like I find ourselves like having those little lies that don't necessarily hurt anyone, but it's not the truth. So if you're not putting the truth out, you're not impeccable with your word.
For sure. I mean, the quote or the saying that came to mind when you were sharing that story is saying no to someone else is saying yes to yourself. Like once I like really digested that, it was easy for me to say, you know what? I'm not going to go out tonight. I'm not going to do that tonight, because I'm going to be doing something for myself. Oh, here we have Banji in the building. This is our mom. This is our Soultry mama. Hi. Thanks for hopping on. So yeah, we'll be so Larry added, we lie because we don't want anyone to judge us. For sure. That was definitely a concept that I related to, because I feel like out of fear of judgment, we learn that at an early age, just to do things that appeases others so we don't have to deal with the judgment.
Yeah, because we're like conditioned to be like people pleasers, and we're conditioned to like want people's approval. So then that's when we start to like lie and like have these judgments to ourselves, because like we wouldn't lie unless we like judge ourselves. So like those things like, oh, I'm running late, that's like a judgment of like, oh, I should be more prepared, or like I'm never blah blah blah. So yeah, that definitely makes sense.
Exactly. So now we want to move on to talking about, the whole chapter. And in this chapter, we want to highlight 4 key concepts that are attached to the first agreement.
So the first concept we wanted to share is planting seeds of change, which is linked to our theme of last month of sustainability, because we did plant literal seeds and plants. But the quote we wanted to share from this book is, the human mind is like a fertile ground where seeds are continually planted. And in the book, it talks about seeds being opinions, ideas, concepts. And the analogy that we thought of was that soil is like Soulcare, water is our words, and the seed or the plant is your life. So if you put in like good soil, you're taking care of yourself, you're watering yourself with impeccable words, then your life will bloom and blossom. So another part of the book was talking about words being able to free yourself or enslave you, which kind of goes back to the concept we were just talking about. Like if you're impeccable with your word, you're being positive, not negative. And so the question I wanted to ask all of you is, what are we communicating to ourselves when we speak? So like, what is that? Is that negative self-talk? Is that positive self-talk? And I know it can change different times. But an example we wanted to share with you guys is like for negative self-talk, it could be like, oh, I always procrastinate, like I'm always late. But instead, we can reframe that and we can say, I pause, I pray, I affirm before I do X, Y, Z. So instead of it being like a bad thing that you're taking your time, you're just allowing yourself that space and just letting it be. Because I feel like a lot of times the judgment comes from us like not just letting ourselves be in our natural state. But yeah, if you guys have any comments on like ways that you communicate with yourself when you speak either to yourself, to others, feel free to comment and then we can share them.
Yeah, I definitely relate to this one. I think we all do. But a memory from my early childhood that comes to mind is, it has to do with dance. So Tony and I grew up dancing. We grew up, training in multiple styles of dance, tap, jazz, ballet, hip hop, lyrical, and ballet actually growing up was not one of my favorite styles of dance. I remember living in Japan, my sensei Oda, like he would just like, oh my God, you're so great at tap, and in ballet, you're just like, a crazy person. Like I used to pick at my leather shoes and just like, I would try to skip ballet as much as I could. And when I took the time to like journal and reflect, I'm like, why couldn't I just get with like, just love ballet? And I realized it's because I had heard things like, ballerinas are skinny and tall. And, when I would look at myself in the mirror, I didn't see myself as skinny. I didn't see myself as tall. I was bow-legged, so it was hard to, when I crossed my fifth, to aesthetically look like the prima ballerina. So it internalized as hate. So I then had this emotional poison of hating ballet. So I would just oppose it. And, when I think back, I'm like, oh man, like how something so simple, a statement that, my teacher didn't tell it directly to me. It was just the fact that it was known that ballerinas look this way. All the pictures of people didn't look like me. It made me despise the style. So has anyone ever had some childhood memories of like that, like something like that? I think it's so interesting.
Yeah. And one thing I wanted to add too is that like, I feel like a lot of times we downplay like negative self-talk we have to ourselves. We're like, oh, it's just like that one statement, like, oh yeah, like my hair is like ugly or whatever it is. But like when we say this to ourselves, it's powerful and it becomes a part of our subconscious. So like, yeah, we may only say that out loud a few times, but that becomes like internalized and we feel that like deep down in ourselves, and then we'll have like lower self-esteem. We won't like want to apply for that job. We won't want to audition for that thing because we feel like we're not like enough or like deserving of that. So like when we are impeccable with our word, we're like creating like a space for ourselves to feel like comfortable, feel safe. So it's definitely like one of those things that sometimes you don't realize you're doing, but through like reading a book like this, you become more aware of it.
Exactly. And one of the quotes that relate to emotional poison, the subject we're talking about right now, is whenever we hear an opinion and belief, we make an agreement. And it becomes a part of our belief system. So like, just think about that. Whenever we hear an opinion, so going back to the example, when I heard that ballerinas look like this, I said, oh, so, okay, I made the agreement. Ballerinas look like that. And then that became a part of my belief system. So it's so crazy to think that just something as simple as a statement that is indirectly said to you can actually become a part of your belief system. So when you're going on social media, when you're listening to that song, when you're, reading certain books, you're digesting. It's all a part of digestion. So it's really important to be mindful of what we're paying attention to.
Because like right now, a lot of us like want to eat more natural foods. We, are exercising, we're drinking water, but like, what are you feeding yourself and like the other things in your life? So that's important as well.
Yeah, so we wanted to actually share one of the stories from the text. It's on page 34. And there was a woman, for example, who was intelligent and had a very good heart. She had a daughter whom she adored and loved very much. One night, she came home from a very bad day at work, tired, full of emotional tension, and with a terrible headache. She wanted peace and quiet, but her daughter was singing and jumping happily. The daughter was unaware of how her mother was feeling. She was in her own world, in her own dream. She felt so wonderful, and she was jumping and singing louder and louder and expressing her joy and her love. She was singing so loud that it made her mother's headache even worse. And at a certain moment, the mother lost control, angrily looked at the beautiful little girl and said, "Shut up. You have an ugly voice. Can you just shut up?" The truth is that the mother's tolerance of any noise was non-existent. It was not that the little girl's voice was ugly, but the daughter believed what her mother said. And in that moment, she made an agreement with herself. After that, she no longer sang because she believed her voice was ugly and would bother anyone who heard it. She became shy at school, and if she was asked to sing, she refused. Even speaking to others became difficult for her. Everything changed in the little girl because of this new agreement. She believed she must repress her emotions in order to be accepted and loved. So that is exactly what Larry was pointing out, is that we lie to ourselves to not be judged by others. And so how many of you have been, indirectly judged, a sibling or a kid? How many of us have been indirectly judged by our parents, friends, family?
Yeah, so if anyone wants to share, we were going to ask you guys if you've ever had like a similar situation in childhood where someone told you something and that really stuck with you, and like maybe you started changing your behaviors, you changed what you like to do, you did or did not do something. So how did that shape you? And now, if you're aware of it, what have you done to change that narrative?
Yes, and so Larry shared that his story makes him more mindful of how he speaks to his daughter. I mean, that's great because I think, as we all know, fathers are, daughters' first example of how a man is supposed to show up in their life. So if you're able to be impeccable with your word and lift her up and help her build really good confidence and image of herself, many thanks to you, our balanced brother, Larry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because like different childhood experiences can have like major impacts in ways that you don't even really know. Like I feel like the story, like if you take time to reflect, then like you'll be able to think of some type of childhood experience. Because I feel like everyone kind of has something, and it doesn't have to be like your family member. It could be like someone at school. Like I know for me, like growing up, like I still wear glasses, but I wore glasses. Like people would be like, "Oh, 4 eyes" or whatever. So I like grew like hatred for my glasses growing up. So when I finally got contact, I was like, oh yay, like they don't think I'm a nerd anymore. When really like now I love wearing my glasses because that doesn't like say anything about me. It's just how I decide to have good vision. So yeah, different things that people say can really get to you and in different ways that you don't even realize. Um, and so the only way to like break these narratives is to make a new agreement based on truth. So instead of like for me thinking that like, oh, because I wear glasses that I'm like more nerdy, it's like, oh no, like this is just a part of me and like I am who I am. So it's definitely a journey. Like nothing ever like changes overnight. Like if you guys have read it, the book, like you probably have noticed that like each agreement definitely takes time to like ruminate, to process, and then like later you might think of like the agreements like whenever a situation comes up.
Yes, and Larry also pointed out a quote. I think I posted it earlier, but we didn't get to touch on it. Is he said, that he had eaten, some junk food, and that he has learned to rewire his brain to not feel bad about it. And I think that it's so important to realize that we're human, and that this effort to be impeccable with our word in the world we live is very difficult, because the world is always telling us to not be impeccable with our word, to prioritize others, to live in fear of judgment. So, it's nice that you rewired it. I think for me, like, I do find myself eating foods that aren't the best nourishment for my body, but you always have the opportunity to start over and move forward. So just like, I think they pointed this out in the first agreement too, is not judging yourself so hardly, so.
Yeah.
Another thing that a quote we wanted to share with y'all in regards to emotional poison is that gossip has become a main form of communication in society. I mean, for example, social media, we were talking about that earlier, and social media, many people can find it negative, but you can be intentional with it.
Yeah, so like with social media, it doesn't always have to be negative. You can actually use it intentionally. So some things you can do with social media can be like curating your feed to follow accounts that like inspire you, lift you up. And don't be afraid to like unfollow or block people or mute people's posts who don't serve you. And I know personally there's some people I know who I like either hide their posts or I stopped following them because like whatever their post just wasn't really serving me. It either like made me think negative thoughts, or maybe it was like negative posts about other people, and I didn't want to be like around that kind of like post and those people. So, and it's a important reminder is that like just because you like block them or unfollow them doesn't mean you don't like them as a person. Like some of these people I still am like friends with, or I'll still see them, but I just don't want to see whatever they post on social media, because all of us use social media for different things, and all of us are on a different journey. So, I just decided to like clear up the people I was following.
No, for sure. And I just to reiterate that, like just to drive that in, is this quote from the book is, your opinion comes from your beliefs, ego, and your dream. So when you're thinking about social media, you want to make sure that you're curating a feed that aligns with your beliefs. Your have a feed that aligns with, not feeding the ego, and building your confidence but not fueling the ego, and that supports your dream. For instance, with Tony and I having our Soultry Sisters account, we definitely follow other women-led businesses, other female entrepreneurs, other women and organizations, even men, people that are doing this work of self-care and basically being radical about self-care. Tony shared something about that on her social media, but that's what we do. We make sure to curate on our Soultry page things that will motivate us to keep doing the work that we're doing.
Yeah, for me, it's really awesome, like the people I follow, because even though it's on the internet, like there's some people who like I've never met in person, but like through their posts and through like messaging them, like I've like became friends with them, and like some of them post very inspirational things that like make me want to try things around the house, whether it's like a DIY project or a new book. I get a lot of my book recommendations from online social media, so there's definitely ways you can use it to help, and it's a way to connect us too. So like maybe in your like group of friends or your family, the people immediately close to you, maybe they're not interested in the same things as you, or maybe they say a lot of negative things and gossip and you don't want to be around that. Then like social media and like the internet, you can find like Facebook groups, you can find like meetup groups for people who are actually like interested in the stuff you want to do. And then you can kind of be around those like-minded people. So there's different ways to use it. So we just wanted to highlight that.
Yeah, I can definitely resonate with the fact that there's beauty in social media and when you can find your like-minded individuals with a click of a button and you can really connect. And then we have Evangeline sharing, I follow people on LinkedIn that are inspirational to me, not so much on Instagram and Facebook. You know, whichever platform works for you. I think when it comes to social media, I think it's choosing a platform that you're going to use in a positive way. For instance, you know, some people don't like YouTube. I love YouTube. I love going to YouTube to, you know, learn about different ways to enhance my soul care, from down to how to make like tzatziki sauce, or I even looked up how to do an oil change. I mean, it's just choose a platform that's going to serve you and work in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that said, I think, you know, we want to talk about the one other quote.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the next quote we wanted to share is, when you are impeccable, you take responsibility for your actions, but you don't judge or blame yourself. So this is also very important because it's about like holding yourself accountable, but again, not judging, because that judgment is coming from like a negative place. But if you're just holding yourself accountable and be like, oh, like I said this or I thought this, it's just coming from a different place. And so impeccable means without sin. And sin begins with rejection of yourself. So when you start to be negative, when you start to blame yourself, that's self-rejection. And so when you're impeccable with your word, it's actually you getting closer to like self-love and acceptance. So you're accepting yourself for how you are right now, giving yourself that space, whether that's like a good thing you're doing or not good, something that you're noticing that you're doing, and just kind of reflecting on that. But yeah, so it's really, I thought this was really important to highlight as a quote, because I feel like our conversation already today, we're talking a lot about judgment. So this kind of put into words what we've already been discussing.
Yes. And I wanted to add to that, because when I read that quote and I look at it again, like, when you are impeccable, you take responsibility for your actions, but you don't blame yourself or judge yourself. So when I just break it down to responsible for your actions, I reframe it to understand it. You're responsible for your reaction, right? Because we can't control what happens to us. And that goes into our current state of the world, right? We can't control what's going on right now, but we can control how we react, right? So that's being impeccable. That's incorporating being impeccable with, your word to our current situation. So that is, prioritizing sleep, taking a break off of social media, making sure you get your soul care in, that you're being creative, you're in the state of having gratitude, like, I have a safe place to be. You're in the growth mindset. Like, while I'm here, I can focus on reading, sleeping, being with family, building a business, whatever that means for you. It's the time to, do what serves you, whether that's sleeping, not doing anything, or really ramping up your productivity. And I think it also goes to say that, like, mental health is something that is the most priority here right now. And part of protecting your mental health is being impeccable with your word, because when you're, comparing resources and comparing your situation to others. I mean, I can speak on that because I am a non-essential worker. I'm currently not working right now. I did feel a little bit like I was saying, I did let myself get into a depressed state. I felt that. But then I realized, like, my depression is a mindset. I'm in a state of depression. And then once I started to prioritize sleep, I started with that. And I started to be creative by cooking my own food. Then I started to work out again. And now I'm like rebuilding my personal website. So it happens in tiers. It's not like you can't be impeccable with all the words. It doesn't say words, it says word. So just I think that's a great thing to think about. How is everyone else doing with, you know, what's going on right now?
Yeah, I also feel like, yeah, we're going off of like mental health during this time. Like being impeccable with your word, it's like not only what you're saying to yourself, but what you're saying to others. And especially during a time like this, like everyone should be a little bit more sensitive to how everyone's feeling because everyone is experiencing this different. Like some of us, like we may have our jobs, we may not, but then maybe our family members are affected. Maybe we know someone personally who has coronavirus. Like maybe we're on the front lines. Like there's a lot of different like moving parts to this. And so I feel like during this time, it's really important for us to be impeccable with how we're speaking to others or how we're speaking about what's happening. Because if we're, some people have been kind of minimizing it and like, oh, like I just want to go out and like, you know, go back out in public. But it's like, is that being impeccable with like how everyone's actually feeling, like some other people's experience? So I know I've kind of noticed that like some people downplaying it. And then I've also had other friends like very much affected by it. And I see their posts and what they're sharing is very different with the words they share than other people. So I feel like I have just kind of been observing. I'm like, oh, wow, it kind of is very different in people's experiences. So yeah, just kind of be more sensitive because you don't know, like not everyone's even going to post what's going on. So you want to like try to like not judge someone for like why they're feeling a certain way, especially during this time.
Yes, and like Larry actually shared a quote from the book. The human is the only animal on earth that pays 1,000 times for the same mistake. If justice exists, then that was enough. We don't need to do it again. Ugh. When I heard that, I was like, how many times do we recycle that emotional poison, right? How many times do we recycle that? So it's important to, like Larry also pointed out, I love that he's being so interactive with us. It's being, you know, being able to filter. And part of being able to filter is, he said, oh, this is actually not Larry, this is Evangeline. She says, self-preparation. Soulcare affects your reaction. The more prepared you are, the more in control you are with your reaction. Yes, that is true.
Yeah, going off of Larry's quote he shared, that was one of the ones I underlined in this chapter because that's one that I find myself realizing and becoming aware that I'm doing that. Like different times, I'll like, I don't know, if you bring up like, I don't know, something about your friend, like, oh yeah, remember when you did that thing? Like you were late last time you came to the party. Are you going to be late again? Like stuff like that, where it's like, is that even necessary to like bring those things up? Because yeah, then again, you're judging that person again for that mistake or whatever that happened the first time. So I do find myself in different situations being like, oh wait, yeah, like why am I bringing this up? Like, is this even helpful? Like, I feel like being impeccable also is about being intentional. Like, okay, is it helping the situation? Like maybe my friend is just stressed. Like maybe they have a lot going on. Like it doesn't have to do with me, which that's a different agreement. But yeah, I feel like not like bringing up the past things into the present, like just leaving it, letting it go. And that also goes about like being responsible because it's like, okay, like maybe that happened in the past, but I'm letting that go. And like, I think choosing to release those kind of things is important as well. Because I feel like we hold a lot of that stuff in, like whether or not we're aware of it.
I totally, you know, bouncing off of that quote, it made me think of another point that was made in the first chapter about how, you know, when we are negative to ourselves, when we judge someone, we're judging ourselves, right? So how many of us says, you know, we'll say like, that person keeps doing this to me. Like, why do they keep doing that? Like they keep doing that. And we're putting that, we're not taking responsibility for us reacting to what someone else is doing. And I think that's, I mean, it could tap into other agreements too, but I'm going to keep it at the fact that, you know, we are, you know, reminding ourselves of what someone else is doing to harm us. And instead it would be better to like reframe it, either remove that person from around you or change, how you're receiving it, or also just realizing like that we're human and that someone else is hurting. So when someone else is hurting us, they're hurting. And that initiates the thought of compassion. So not only does we need to be compassionate for others, we have to be compassionate with ourselves. So that quote made me think of like that other concept that was brought up in the first agreement.
Yeah. Also, that makes me think of, like you said, when someone says something, maybe that's not really a direct reflection of you. That makes me think how, yeah, when someone, kind of back to that story of the mother and the girl, like the mother was saying something to the girl, but it wasn't like, the mom obviously wasn't being intentional, but the girl internalized that. And then from then on, she just didn't want to be loud. She didn't want to sing anymore. So I feel like a lot of times we do that as well. Like someone may tell us something like, oh, our hair looks a certain way, or like, oh, why are we trying to do X, Y, Z? And then we internalize it. We're like, oh, I guess I must not be like able to do that. And so we start to like limit ourselves because we believe what that person said. So I feel like it's kind of like, okay, someone might say something to you, and then I guess you can like pause and then reflect like, okay, is this like actually how I feel, or is that just like something they're saying to me? And then that's when you can kind of reframe it and be like, okay, like I'm either letting that go because that has nothing to do with me, or like, okay, I'm going to take this and kind of reflect and see how I can change. Because maybe it's trying to be what do you call it, a critique, or maybe they're trying to help you in a way, but it's not coming out as helpful. So if you can kind of break it down in those bits, then you can take what is actually helpful for you and then release whatever is actually hurtful.
It's so funny how like this conversation is like kind of making us bounce and think of other quotes and concepts in the first chapter or the first agreement. And going back, when you're sharing how you were observing how your friends were reacting to our current state, right? And I think the fact that you are sharing that you were able to observe what their reactions shows that you have fertile ground for only love and positivity. It shows how strong your personal power is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so going into personal power, this is kind of what we really liked to talk about today with this agreement, because, well, I'll share a quote first. So the quote is, if you want to live a life full of joy and fulfillment, you have to find courage to break those agreements that are fear-based and claim your personal power, which I think this quote is very powerful in itself, because it's talking about like nurturing our relationship with ourselves, and that goes into self-love. And so self-love measures how impeccable you are with your word. Like we've been talking, if you have positive self-talk, that's feeding love to yourself. And it's a reflection of the quality and integrity of your word. Again, we've kind of talked about this. And when you are impeccable with your word, you're creating and dreaming your own reality. So through being intentional with positive self-talk, you're able to create a life that you want to live and that you are happy with, and it's like abundance, it's acceptance. And personal power is tied to our solar plexus chakra. And so we wanted to share a Soulcare tip with you all, because not only are we reading this book to share like our favorite quotes and stuff, but we definitely also wanted an element where you guys can take away, have something you can use at home.
Yes. So I'm going to walk you through this. So if you do have some essential oil at home, you can either use it as a roller or just, grab any essential oil. But for working with the solar plexus and helping us be impeccable with our word, you want to use a citrusy essential oil, something like lemon, orange, or lemongrass, because that's going to help uplift and boost your mood. And so not only are we're going to use the senses to kind of help us embody this first agreement. It feels so good. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some of that essential oil and you're going to rub it on your fingers. Now, if you don't have a roller ball, you can just mix your essential oil with some almond oil or some coconut oil, something to break it up so it's not too intense. You're going to take it and put it on your fingers. And then you're going to locate your solar plexus, which is right above your belly button. And then you're going to rub the oil in clockwise. The reason why we're going to rub it in clockwise is because it's going to help us to internalize this confidence. And we're also going to pair it with saying, like repetition. We're going to say, I am radiating confidence. I am radiating confidence. So we're using the senses. We're smelling this cheery smell. We're touching and embracing ourselves. And then we are using the words. We're listening to these words. We're saying these words. And then to finalize this activity, you're going to take it and you're going to rub your hands together. It's going to get kind of warm. And then you're going to just take it all in. And again, I am radiating confidence.
Smells so nice.
It's so good. I mean, me and Tony, we love essential oils. It's one of the Soulcare daily practices that we use. It's definitely like a quick mood booster. So we hope that exercise, that Soulcare tip, you can take and apply it while you are, living your life, while you're doing your daily practices. It's great to pair with meditation, your walks, before bed, when you wake up. You can do it at any time. And even if you don't have an oil, so say if I don't have any oil, because you don't work with essential oils, the motion and saying it will do just the job. It's because that's why we layer things. We love to layer. That's one of our specialties. So we hope that you like that. And, if you try it, let us know. Definitely
tag us in
your
doing
your new ritual of being impeccable with your word and using affirmations. Yeah, so we really enjoyed having our first episode here on with you for our Live Vibrant, Shine Bright series. We're going to be back every Friday for the following month at 5 p.m. Pacific time, 5:30 p.m. Pacific time, and 8:30
Eastern time. So same time, Facebook Live. And it's going to be recorded, so then we'll post it in the Facebook group. So if you haven't already, please join our Facebook group. It is private, so you can just DM us and we can add you in there, because throughout the week we have weekly discussions. We post links, we post videos. We're going to start posting songs and playlists and stuff, which would be really fun. So we hope to see you guys next week. So we'll be still talking about 4 agreements for the rest of this month, because there is 3 other agreements to get through. And then at the end of the month, on May 31st, we'll have an actual Zoom gathering, so everyone can actually contribute if they want, so they can have audio or video and talk about kind of like a wrap up of the book. And then also May 17th is our Bloom event, which is our Mental Health Awareness Month event. It will be about collective healing and creative expression. So there you can go to our website, soultrysisters.com. In the events tab, we'll have all of the info. We hope to see you guys there. It'll be more of journaling, mental health, using poetry, creative expression to kind of release all of those things and be more positive.
Definitely ties into being impeccable with our word, because we'll be using journaling and poetry. So if you liked this episode, you're going to love diving deeper during that workshop. It's going to be on Zoom, so it's going to be interactive. We'll be talking to each other. If you're, you've never met us before, you'll be able to meet us. We'll be able to talk and just celebrate, create, and connect. So we hope to see you all next week. Again, go ahead and comment below. If you just jumped in, if you're watching this later, please share this on your social media. Let your friends know, and we hope to see you next week.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.